dangerous. He's mad. I do so love custard. Or was it mustard?
We removed your brain.
Do you comprehend, commie animal? Get your act together. You're making us look like a collection of round earthers.
Vivisect me, please.
You think I don't know how crazy I sound? Of course I do. They made me just to torture me.
The things you do with our body are suicidally dangerous. You're a monster. A deranged monster.
In yesterday's video, we retrieved the stealth suit from the X-13 facility. We now have all three technologies that Dr. Klein requested. However, we've picked up a few holotapes along the way, and before we go to Dr. Klein, we might as well install them. In episode 5, we went over 2 of the artificial intelligences that we can install in the sink, Muggy and the toaster. But one of the first AIs that we find is likely the personality of light switch number 1. We find her holotape while exploring the X2 satellite transmitter. We find it on the ground floor in the southeast corner, leaning against a coffee maker. Back at the sink, we can activate the personality by flipping on the light switch.
Oh my! Partial functionality restored. That's less than optimal.
We can then pass either a lady killer or cherchez la femme check to say, you know, it's not often I meet a light switch with brains and beauty. I think I'm gonna like it here.
Oh, well, that's very sweet of you. Maybe one of these nights we can discuss theorems?
Maybe. I'll let you know.
Don't keep me waiting too long, honey.
I'd enjoy that.
Me too. Hope you can keep up. I work pretty fast. Here, something for you to brush up on.
Why wait? I can talk about theorems right now.
Slow down there, Tiger. We've got all the time in the world. No need to rush into things. Why don't you take some time to brush up on your knowledge so we can keep things stimulating?
And she gives us a programmer's digest to cool off. Well, Light Switch 1, what function do you serve?
Dr. Mobius and I were deeply involved in research on the ability of light levels to enhance human cognition.
Oh, what were the results?
We observed a fascinating phenomenon. Certain spectra of visible light actually increased cognitive function and reasoning ability. Of course, Dr. Mobius's brain is so big already, we had a hard time measuring it.
Alright. Hey, can you turn those lights on for me?
As much as I'd love to, I'm afraid not. The data from that study has gone missing. You'll have to find a backup if you want to use the smart lights.
Looks like I've got to find that data. I'll be back.
Certainly. I'm looking forward to it.
To find the holotapes to activate her smart lights, we go to the X12 Research Center, which I fully explored in episode 6. At the very bottom of a long staircase, we find a projector on a table in the middle of the room, and leaning against it is the holotape Light Switch 1 upgrade, Smart Lights. With this in hand, we can go back to the sink and activate the light switch to install the upgrade. Upgrade holotape received, upgrading to Smart Lights functionality, which grants +2 intelligence, +5 repair, and +5 science for 12 hours after initial exposure, which is a pretty doggone good buff. We can turn the lights on or off simply by asking her.
How can I illuminate you?
We then get an option to choose which light switch we want to turn on. Since so far we've only found the upgrade for light switch 1, we can choose the smart lights. And the room glows a golden yellowish color. But as nice as these lights are, we're still partially in the dark. There's a light switch in our bedroom, but it doesn't work, so we need to find the artificial intelligence for light switch number 2. To do so, we take the train tracks as far north as we can. Here we see Father Elijah's work. The trains are derailed and tipping over. And right next to X42, the entrance to the Forbidden Dome, we find a door that leads to the Big Mountain North Tunnel.
Attention, Big Mountain! There's a 95% chance of clear skies interrupted with artillery fire.
Inside, we immediately see a unique mini-boss. This is the overclocked turret. This turret is strange. It doesn't attack when it sees you. You have to walk really close to it before it becomes hostile. Since this guy is guarding a secret stash, we still need to destroy him. Against the eastern wall, we find a door, which leads to a bathroom. And on a shelf, leaning against a toolbox, we find the holotape for Sync Project Light Switch 2. Before installing the light switch, we can finish exploring this tunnel. There are a couple of containers to loot, and disturbingly, a bleeding skull lying in one of these lockers. And heading towards the overclocked turret, we see a big hole in the ground, but it's filled up by a force field. There are a couple of skeletons near one of these rail cars. Near to one, we find some Mentats and Hydra, as well as a couple of containers. And then taking out our trusty, dusty sonic emitter, we can remove the force field to explore the hole. Inside, we find a bunch of cave fungus, which is great for our recipes. And at the very end, we find a stash. Someone has gone to great lengths to hide this stash here. After looting the containers, we can walk away with grenades, ammunition, and a bunch of scrap. Nothing terribly interesting. Back at the sink, we can install the personality of light switch number 2 by activating it.
That was a nice little cat nap. How long was I out?
And again, we can flirt with this light switch as well by passing either a lady killer or cherchez les femmes check to say, a light switch that turns me on? I must be dreaming.
Oh, you. I bet you say that to all the light switches.
Only the sexy ones.
Now I know you're flirting with me. And it's working. Why don't you take this to remember me by?
Never. I'm all yours, baby.
Now, don't you go getting a girl's hopes up if you don't mean it. Oh, who am I kidding? I'll believe you anyways. Why don't you take this to remember me by?
You're right, I do.
Oh, well, it's nice to be included.
So, what are you, some sort of novelty talking light switch?
I was Dr. Mobius's personal assistant. We were studying, oh shoot, what was it? Oh yeah, lightning! Lighting. That's right, how lighting affects human interaction.
Huh, that sounds like what the other light switch was working on.
Ew, don't lump me in with her. I'm way more fun.
Well, what did you and Dr. Mobius find out?
Oh, it was super exciting. It turns out that some pretty colored lights can make you way better at talking to people.
Can you turn on those lights for me?
Oh, I'd love to, sweetie, but I don't have the programming. All the data from the experiments was lost. You'd have to go out into that nasty old crater and find the backup copy.
So I was talking with that other light switch in the other room. Can you control that one too?
Oh, her. Trust me, sweetie, you're better off not thinking about that frigid little ice queen.
Sounds like there's some bad blood between you. Or, bad circuits?
That bitch. She thinks she's so much better than everybody just because her processors are bigger. Ooh, she makes me so mad.
Well, I don't know if I'm better off not thinking about the other light switch, because after all, smart lights could be useful.
I knew it. You've got a thing for her, don't you? Oh, you just make me sick.
Hey, what can I say? She and I just click.
You really know how to break a synthetic girl's heart.
Hey, calm down. I don't have a thing for the light switch.
Okay, I believe you. This time.
Hey, just forget I said anything about the other light switch.
Sure thing, sweetie.
Well, we've uncovered some dramatic personalities here in the sink. But in order to activate her special light boost, we need to find her upgrade. This takes us southwest of the sink until, amongst the snaking pipes, we find the Saturnite Alloy Research Facility. Upon entry, we see an advertisement for the Cosmic Knife, which we first saw at the Sierra Madre. We're in some sort of lobby, and before looting, we can take care of a crazed Mr. Handy.
And for that, you must die!
Whew. Peering around the corner, we see another couple of crazed Mr. Handys at the very top of the catwalk. But getting off a couple of sneak criticals makes easy work of them. While looting this lobby area, we find big bars of metal stamped with the logo Saturnite, just sort of stacked over here in the corner. What exactly is this Saturnite metal? We find some mentats on the ground near a footlocker filled with all sorts of ammunition, and then we can head out the door to enter the main factory floor. Immediately upon entry, if we turn left, we see big bars of finished Saturnite alloy stacked up next to a giant footlocker. In the footlocker, next to some 10mm ammunition, we find the holotape light switch 2 upgrade mood lights. We'll go install this, but before we do, let's finish exploring this factory. Turning around to explore the factory floor, we see another big stack of these Saturnite bars and what looks like a forge of some sort. It looks like one of these bars is in the middle of being created. Is it being pressed from the molten ore? We see a big tub of this molten metal sitting right next to the machine, and off in the corner we find a bunch of Saturnite shells. These are the same shells that the think tank scientists fired upon their own test cities here inside the crater. From all appearances, this is where they were made. In the northeastern corner, we find a skeleton surrounded by chems. We can walk away with a tidy stash of jet. And then heading up the stairs, we can go across a catwalk until we pass through a door leading to another portion of the facility. Here we find a couple of containers in this floating pod, and we come out inside a cave. Heading down the stairway, we see it split left or right. It looks like taking the left path will go deeper, so turning right, we come down to a ground floor where we can loot some mentats and scrap from a few containers. We can then go back up and go down the other staircase. This leads to another floating platform with a few containers. And again, 2 ways out. Going down the eastern staircase leads us to a rocky ledge. Sliding down the rock a little bit, we find a couple of containers at the very bottom, and really that's it. So heading back up, we can instead go down the other staircase, which brings us to a little sandy portion of the cave tucked underneath the stairs. After looting the containers there, we can go back up and then down the western staircase. This appears to lead us to the rest of the cave. We find our path blocked by a force field. Taking out our sonic emitter, we can get rid of the thing, whereupon we get attacked by a mini-boss handy named Sparks.
Here we go again! Up all this blood? Me, that's who.
I whipped out my proton inversal axe and made good use of the bonuses against robots this thing has. Continuing along, we find that the catwalk brings us out into the middle of a large, vaulted cave chamber. We see a few more crazed Mr. Handys walking around. I sniped them off as best I could, but one got pretty close to me. This path appears to go in a big loop, so we'll go north for now. Going north, rounding a corner, and heading down some stairs. We find another staircase to the south, which leads to the rocky floor of the cave, but instead, we're gonna go west and explore this pod over here. We see some containers to one side, and then to the other side we find a Saturnite fist, right next to a footlocker. Which of course makes sense. If the Saturnite fist was made from the Saturnite metal, we would expect to find one in the very place where that metal comes from. There's not much in this pod, aside from a few more containers to loot, so coming out the other end, instead of going back up to where we were, we can go down a staircase to the ground floor. Walking towards the middle of the room, we see a big hole with molten lava inside. Sitting on a ledge right next to the big molten pool is the corpse of a construction worker. His hat and pick lie next to his body. Was this built on top of a volcano? Or did this facility mine for this molten ore? We don't find large forges like we did in the pit. Now, this place is called the Saturnite Alloy Research Facility, which leads us to believe that the finished product is an alloy of whatever lava this is and something else. Now, at the Sierra Madre, we learned when we read up on the cosmic knife that this Saturnite metal resembled ceramic. Its unique properties are its exceptional hardness and sharpness. We don't know what all of the ingredients are, nor do we know what ore they're mining from this pit in the middle of this room. But we must presume that they mix it with something else on the top floor in order to create the finished alloy. I believe we are to walk away from this with the idea that Saturnite metal is able to retain heat for an extended period of time. When the toaster superheats our Saturnite power fist, it glows red and delivers heat damage for a long time. We found large bars of Saturnite alloy being pressed here that were still glowing red, presumably after having lost their source of heat for over 200 years. The cool bars of Saturnite ore that we find stacked on the ground and leaning against walls have likely been manually cooled, possibly dunked in water or doused with some sort of substance that would cool them. This is the only way I can explain some of these bars still glowing red so long after being removed from a heat source. And with that, we finish exploring the complex. Retracing our steps, we can go back to the factory, but instead of going out the main door, we can exit through the garage door. This brings us outside to the loading area. We see some containers stacked against the building next to a Sunset sarsaparilla machine, and a big truck filled with munitions. More of these Saturnite shells. There's the skeleton of a construction worker just south of the truck, and in the back of the truck, next to all of these shells, are a couple of footlockers. Back at the sink with the holotape in hand, we can activate light switch 2 to install the upgrade. Upgrade holotape received. Upgrading to mood lighting functionality. +2 charisma, +5 barter, and +5 speech for 12 hours after initial exposure.
You've been seeing the other light switch, haven't you? Am I not enough for you anymore?
Can you turn on the lights for me, light switch 2?
You bet I can. I bet that's more than that other tramp can do, huh?
We can now choose which of these lighting effects we would like from either of the two light switches. They don't stack, we can only choose one. So for example, if we turn on smart lights, the room turns yellow, and when we check our status effects in our Pip-Boy, we see that we have the smart lights effect. If we immediately go back and switch to mood lighting, the lights turn a red amberish color, very romantic, and we get the mood lighting effect. So they override each other, but they still last for 12 hours each. If we go back to one of the light switches and switch to standard lighting, we still see that we have the status effect from the last light that we had on. Additionally, we can always choose to turn the lights off. We see some track lights kind of glowing at the top, but it's much darker in here. Like Muggy and the toaster, both light switches will randomly say stuff as we walk by.
Adjusting lights for maximum concentration levels. Is the light level to your liking? Maybe we could dim the lights and have a candlelit discussion of classic literature. Have you been poking at the other light switch? You know she's riddled with viri, don't you? Don't even talk to me. I've seen you with her. It's not like I haven't tried to get along with her. Lord knows I have. She's just such a floozy. Have you been flirting with the Ice Queen again? Ugh, I'm so much more fun. Ooh, baby, let's turn off the lights and turn on the lights. Who's ready for a party? If I made out with the sink, would you pay attention to me? Want to push my buttons? Mood lights have more fun.
And if we discover both light switches and get both upgrades, at the very end of the game, we learn the following.
The light switches continue to bicker and flicker.
This persisted until the day someone dropped a flashlight in the sink, and the two of them united in their hatred of the showboat. One of them eventually transferred to the Lightwave Dynamics plant and began a long, unrequited affair with one of the holograms.
And with that, we've discovered 4 personalities for the sink, but there are still so many more to find. We also have to track down the trails of Father Elijah and Christine, not to mention this strange courier we keep hearing about. And we've got to confront Dr. Mobius and retrieve our brain. So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. I publish a new video 6 days a week. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss episode 9, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. I've got a new shirt in the shop, folks. New California Republic. I wouldn't make a Legion shirt while ignoring the NCR. On the front, we have the NCR logo with the 2-headed bear, and on the back, we have a trooper helmet with crisscrossing service rifles and the words, "Patrolling the Mojave almost makes you wish for a nuclear winter." You can find the shirts in a variety of styles, hoodies, sweatshirts, and a myriad of colors. Also, I've heard your cries. Many people have been leaving comments saying that they prefer single-sided shirts, so I've made single-sided shirts of some of my past designs, which are now all available on the shop. You can find a link to my shop in the the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, with episode 9.